Hello again and welcome back. My name's Annie and this is my creative detour. Today I'm going to be doing a video on how to make faux wallpaper. And a few videos ago I did this composition where I did page clusters and I used this faux wallpaper in the background, and I also made a flower. You can see that it's gone flat because it's inside the book, but because it's coated you can just scrunch it up again and it gets some more form. Now the wallpaper here that I've made, you can see here's an example of it, this piece here, and I've made it out of packaging, and I've also made it out of serviettes and Mod Podge. So that's what we're going to do today, and I'm going to talk about a few techniques, and I'm also going to talk about some hits and misses, things that I tried and things that worked and things that didn't work, and give some pointers of how I got my best results. So let's get set up and I'll show you some of the steps. Okay, so the very first thing that I did was I decided on my packaging. I tried a few different thicknesses and I found that the thicker the paper, the more rigid the end product and the less pliable it is. So if that's something that you're after, start with a thicker type of packaging at the beginning. So I did some on heavy gauge brown paper, and to be honest, it's a little bit too thick. The end product is a little bit too thick for me. But this brown paper that I've got, that is packaging off of products or stock, you can see it's quite pliable, it's not overly thick, and I've found that this is quite good. I also really like using the wrapping paper from the delicatessen because it's really absorbent, so it absorbs the adhesive quite well and bonds really well, and it also scrunches, so it scrunches really well. So if you're wanting to get texture in the background, it works really well, and it's packaging that you would normally throw in the bin. It's free, so I really like using that. Now, depending on the look that you're wanting to get, you get different results by using a different colored background. So I'll show you here. We have the same serviette. I'll pull out the serviette. So here we go. Here's the serviette. Now, you can see that these look completely different from my beginning product, and that's because this one here, I have put the pulled apart serviette onto the deli paper, and you can see on the back there's the deli paper, and so the background is lighter. Now with this one, I put the pulled apart serviette onto this brown paper, and they look completely different. This one's brighter, has more life, and this one's more muted and moody. So depending on what you want to put in the background, pick a piece of packaging that is going to give you different values of light and dark. So that's that one. I'll show you also. So here we go. Here's another example. This one here is on deli paper, and this one is on brown paper. You can see there's the brown on the back, and they look completely different. Okay, so just a tip on picking the background paper that's going to work the best. Now, to get started, you need, like I said, you need some sort of background piece of packaging. Now, you could use other types of paper. You could use some copy paper, lightweight copy paper. That would work fine, but I didn't want to use copy paper when I've got free packaging to use up. The next thing you're going to need is a serviette. And I have lots of different serviettes. You can see that I've got different patterns here. And the very first thing that you do is you separate the plies of the serviette. Now, some serviettes are 2-ply and some are 3-ply. So you can see that it comes apart quite easily. And we're going to use all the parts of the serviette. And you can see that I'm going to be able to now pull apart another layer. So there's two, on this one, there's two sheets of white serviette, thin, almost like tissue paper. And then there's our last layer of our pattern. Now, the pattern is the bit that you're ultimately wanting. I'm going to put that piece to the side because I need to prepare my substrate first. So we'll get to doing this in a moment. The adhesive that you use makes a difference as well. You can see with these ones that they'll sound different to you. So this one here adhered together with Mod Podge, and you can see it's got a slight sheen to it. I have used Mod Podge matte adhesive, and it is lovely and thick and textural and really, really sturdy. Like, I'll tear it for you. I'll show you. You can tear it, but it's quite hard to tear. And it's almost like it's turned it into vinyl. Okay. Now, that's with Mod Podge, and it gives an excellent result. If you don't want to use Mod Podge, because Mod Podge is quite expensive, this one here I have done with PVA. Now, it has more of a paper texture to it. It sounds a little bit more like paper, and it has a matte finish to it, and it tears like paper, and you can hear that it tears like paper. So the end product is different depending on what glue or adhesive you're going to use. If you're going to put something on the cover of a journal, you're wanting to make it a little bit more water resistant and hard wearing and sturdy, I would use Mod Podge as my gluing agent. If you're wanting to use it for like a textural page or a pocket or something inside your journal and you want to save some money, you could use PVA glue. Now, I mixed my PVA up around about 2/3 PVA to 1/3 water, and I mixed it together and made it all cohesive. I didn't have it like half mixed. I mixed it thoroughly and did the process that I'm going to show you with PVA and got a good product. But I think that for a cover, I think that this is still going to absorb some moisture and maybe not be as hard wearing as what the Mod Podge is. Okay, so let's get started, and then I'll show you a few other things that I've made along the way. Okay, I've just changed my background so that you can see the sheet a little bit. This is my splatter sheet that I use. I do have some grease-proof paper or baking paper down to protect my desk, and that's what I've been doing it on. And I have tipped out some Mod Podge. So I'm going to use Mod Podge, but feel free to use PVA, and like I said, you'll just get a different result. Okay, so we have separated our serviettes, and we have some plies of serviette, some decorative and some non-decorative. So let's use those because we don't want to waste them, and they give some more sturdiness to the end product. So I'll just cut this through because it probably won't tear very well. And I'm just going to cover my page with some Mod Podge. Now, it's quite therapeutic. I tend to do a bit of a mass make where I make a whole lot of things and then lay them out on the pavers outside in the outdoor area, and they all just dry away, and then I go back out and get them and then do the next layer. So you can see that I'm just laying it down. I just push it softly with my hand. Just going to cut off a little piece for here. And the key is to not overwork it as well. So I'm going to put a layer of Mod Podge back over the top and just gently brush it. Now you could use a decoupage brush if you wanted to, or a brayer, but I just do it softly with my big brush so that I don't have to clean up too many things with glue on. I don't want to be cleaning a whole heap of tools and things. Now, in an ideal world, I would do this layer and then I would set this aside and let this dry completely, because I'm less likely to tear it if I let it dry. But for the sake of the camera, I'm going to press on, and I'm going to do another layer on top. So I'll just lay this on here. And I'll just gently now do another layer over the top of that. Now this is the bit where it can tear, and I try not to tear it, but if it tears, it's not the end of the world. It's paper and glue. And the purpose of doing two layers is that I've found that I like the thickness a little bit better, the end product, if it's got two layers of the serviette on. That's just my preference. You might do it and then try it and think, oh no, I don't need the two layers. Your serviettes might be thicker than mine. I get mine from the junk shop, from the $2 shop, and you know, I get a decent sized bag of serviettes for $2 in all different patterns, and the quality may not be as good as what your serviettes are. So just gauge it for yourself. Okay, so I'm not going to overwork that now. I'm just going to leave it, but I will show it to you up on the camera what it looks like. So you can see that it's all covered with Mod Podge, and I'm going to actually lift it off of here because it will stick to the brown paper. I normally have it on the greaseproof because it comes off a bit easier, but because you wouldn't have been able to see that. So there we go, and you can see that it's quite floppy at the moment. So set that aside now and let it thoroughly dry. Okay, so now for the purposes of the camera, I have one that I made earlier. You can see that I have my deli paper on the back, and I have two pieces of serviette that has been adhered to it, and it's already feeling sturdy and resistant. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn it over and work on the deli paper, and I'm going to do some stamping. So you can see with this one in the background, I stamped just whatever. I stamped some ledger and some text and some coffee rings, and did that first. So let's do that. Let's stamp some things on the back. Make it relevant to the serviette you're using. So I'm going to use this Christmas serviette with these lovely poinsettias and these birds on it. So I'm going to do probably just some text in the background, and look at where I'm going to put it, because I'm probably going to position it about here. So I kind of want the text around the edge of my two focal points that I'm going to have. So let's pull out some stamps and some ink. Okay, I'm pulling out this stamp from Poppy Crafts, and it's stamp number 617, and it's got some music on it and some script. And Poppy Crafts, I purchase Poppy Crafts products from Craft Online here in Australia, but you could use any kind of script or music that you want. And I'm going to use some StazOn because one, some of the glue has adhered into the paper and it will resist some inks, but also I'm going to be putting this over the top of my stamping and then putting Mod Podge on it, and I don't want it to bleed. So I'm just going to use some StazOn, and I have two colors. I have Spiced Chai and I have Ganache. So let's just do a little bit of stamping. I'm not going to overthink it. Because I'm using StazOn, I clean my stamps straight away. This time I think I'll use the darker one, Ganache, for the music. Because there's birds on it. So I want the birds chirping to some music. I'm not sure whether you'll see it or not, but at the moment I'm kind of just creating a masterboard. Okay, I just waited for that ink to dry completely, and then I have cut my serviette, and I'm just going to position it so that I can see some of the information through it, and I'm happy with the position of it, which I am. I think I'll put it about there. And now I'm just going to do the same process. So once again, I've stamped onto the back side of what we were doing. And now that will mean that the deli paper is sandwiched in between the serviettes. So we'll glue that on with Mod Podge again. Like I said, you could use PVA. It's much cheaper than using your good Mod Podge, but I'm okay about using Mod Podge today to show you. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to put a layer of Mod Podge now over the top of the surface that I've just stamped. You can see that because I use StazOn, it's not smudging. Okay, I'll lay on my serviette where I want it. Now you might be thinking to yourself, Annie, what are you going to use this wallpaper for? Well, it's endless, isn't it? Once it's made, you can do anything with it, especially if you've layered it up with quite a lot of layers of the serviette to make it substantial. Perfect for journal covers. Okay, now that's just lifting off of there because it's wet from the Mod Podge, but that's okay. I don't need that anyway. I'm only needing the bit that is on the deli paper. Now, you can see already just by putting that little bit of stamping in the background that the image has a lot more depth and interest. So now I'll let that dry, completely dry. And there are some other things that I want to show you in the meantime. There's a few things that I want to show you what you can do. For example, you may have put your decoupage together and then thought, it's looking a bit average, it's looking a bit bland. It didn't come out as exciting as what I thought it was going to be. So it doesn't matter. You can stamp onto this now as well. The only thing is you need to use an ink that's not going to smudge. And for me, the ones that I've tried, I find StazOn the best. So you can see here that I have stamped onto the serviette. And then after the StazOn has dried, I have then put on some more serviette over the top. So let's do that as an example. So I'm going to stamp onto it. I'm just going to use some text this time. Now when you're stamping with StazOn onto something that has Mod Podge on, you need to try not to twist. You need to be very purposeful with your stamping, so because it will smudge, it will blur if you move your stamp pad at all. So pop it down, hold it for a bit. I tend not to move around it too much because I don't want to risk smudging it. Okay, that will do. And I'll just clean that off. I really need that to dry thoroughly, and it will take a little bit of time because the surface is sealed. So it's not going, the ink's not going to absorb into it. It's going to sit on the surface, and that's what StazOn does. It sits on the surface and then eventually dries, evaporates and dries. Okay, so now I have put some of that on, and I'm going to use some serviette and decoupage onto it. Instead of tearing my serviette, I'm just going to dip a paintbrush into some water, and I'm just going to draw with the water where I want it to tear. And if you just give it a little second, it will tear along that line that you have painted with the paintbrush. And that means that you can get whatever design and pattern you want out of it. You can see here I want this flower and I want it to come out there and down there, so I'll just wet my paintbrush and draw it on where I want it to go. Just wait for a little bit, then I can tear it, and it'll tear along through the middle of that line that you've just painted. And you get the image out of the serviette that you want. So I'm going to pop that there like that. Okay, so I'm just going to Mod Podge on now that my StazOn has dried. I'm just going to Mod Podge on my pieces of serviette that I want. So like I said, remember this is if you think, oh, I want to do a little bit more than what was on it. It's not as, you know, I didn't put enough stamping on it, or I now think it needs whatever. You can do it after the fact. And I'll put this piece on. Pop that one into there. That'll look nice. There we go. That looks pretty good, doesn't it? But I'm going to make it look better because I purchased some Mod Podge that has gold glitter in it. Now let me tell you the name of it. It's called Mod Podge Dishwasher Safe Gold Glitter Top Coat. So let's give that a try. And I'm going to use some of this off of here, and I'm just going to paint it onto where the flowers are. The thing that I like about it is that the gold flakes are all different sizes. They're not all the same. They're not like, you know, like when you put glitter onto something, all the little pieces of glitter are the same. Well, it's not like that. It has different size pieces of glitter. So I'm just going to dot that around. Not everywhere, but just onto the flowers. And wash my brush straight away. And let that dry. There we go. I'm not sure whether you can see that. And when that dries, I'll show it to you at the end of the video, and we'll have a look whether we like it or not. But that's the first time I've used it. I'm just going to put this piece of baking paper back onto the top. so that it helps with keeping it sealed well. Alright, so that's that one. Now I want to show you another option of what we can do as well. Okay, so that was that one, and we'll let all that dry, but I want to show you something else that we can do as well. So let's bring out an embossing folder. I have two examples, so you can see here that this one, it looks like this, just on the deli paper. So you can see that it's got deli paper. This one doesn't have an extra layer of the white serviette because you don't have to use it all the time. If you're going to use it as a piece of wallpaper background in your journal, like I did in mine, it doesn't need to be overly thick. And it tears much easier. You can see that this tears quite easily because it doesn't have as many layers. But you might look at that and think, oh, I'd like to grunge it up a bit, or I'd like to make it look a little bit more antique or vintage. So you can see here that I have run it through an embossing folder. And I just picked out a textured embossing folder that had some text in the background. So use any of your embossing folders and just play. And you can see that it actually looks quite nice. It is kind of vintagey, antique looking. This one here looks a little bit more contemporary. You can see that I have pulled out a gingham embossing folder. So let me show you how I did that. You can see that it's only in some spots. There's not very much on the leaves. I'm not sure whether you can see the ink's not on the leaves, but the embossing is on the leaves. So let's do that. I have another one to show you. And what I want to do, I'm going to look at my piece of decoupage, and you can see that I've done it exactly how I showed you. I have deli paper, then I have 2 layers of serviette, white serviette paper. Then on the other side, once it had dried, I put my decorative part of the serviette. And it was then sealed with Mod Podge, and you can feel that it's very vinyl-y and really sturdy, hard to tear, and hard wearing. So what I want to do is I want to feel my embossing folder and decide what I want to show. So when you're feeling your embossing folder, you're going to have the embossing and the debossing. Well, I want to make sure that I put the raised part that's going to push in and leave the plaid print. I want that to stamp some ink and emboss some ink into my serviette. So what I'm going to do is it will go like this. You can see that it's a retired Stampin' Up one. And I don't really need it on my leaves because it won't show up very much. I'll kind of want it in the background. So I need to put some ink here, some ink here, and some ink here. So I'll flip that over, which means that it needs to have ink through this section to the right-hand bottom corner. I'll pick a different color this time. I might pick let's go radical. I think I'll use pumpkin. So I'm using a StazOn pumpkin, and I'm not going to stamp it or push it on. I'm just going to wave it across my embossing folder in the areas that I want it. Now I'm going to position it on to where I want it. Close it over. And I'm going to take that to my embossing machine and emboss it. I'll be back in a moment. Okay, now when you open it up, you'll find that it has stuck to your embossing folder quite well. You'll have to peel it off, and that's partly because of the ink and the Mod Podge. There we go. Now just leave that and let it dry. Let the StazOn set. In the meantime, wash your embossing folder. Okay, so there it is. There, it's dried. And I kind of like the lighter one better, but it's good to play and try some different things. This one, I'm not liking the red on the leaves, where I did manage to get on the leaves, but uh, you can try all different types of embossing on it, and it gives different textures to it and adds other inked patterns to it as well. You can see on that other one that it's totally changed the look of it and gave it a different feel. So there we go. You can do some embossing onto it. You can do some stamping onto it. Our glitter has dried and it's very glittery. I think when I use this again, I will use it with a very fine brush and be very purposeful of where I want to put it. But especially with Christmas coming up, that's a very interesting product. And especially with it being dishwasher safe as well once it dries. Now I will clear the decks and I'll show you one last thing that is fantastic about making your own wallpaper out of packaging and serviettes. I'll clear up and I'll be back. Okay, now this is the reason I did it in the first place, was because I wanted a product that was a design that I wanted and the size that I wanted. So you could make a piece of wallpaper, and it really is, listen to it, it's like vinyl wallpaper. It even performs like vinyl wallpaper, and it's sturdy. You can hear how stiff and strong it is. And you could make this as big as the piece of paper that you get from packaging. Now, I get sheets of packaging that are around about 1.2 meters square, which is around about 4 feet square. So potentially you could make all of that out of just repeating your serviettes or tearing it up and doing whatever. I'm not sure whether you can see, but through the center here, this is where the serviettes, I overlapped them. Now what I did is I didn't do a straight line. Okay, so after I have separated my serviette, what I did was I had a look at the edges of where I wanted the pattern to work. And I looked for bits that I was not chopping through a big dominant flower. So here, this line here is still going to show. So what I decided is on this bit, there's no sections where you're cutting through a dominant flower. And then I got my paintbrush and I just wet it again, and I went along the edge and wet the edge and chopped into it, put some water where I thought it could take a bit of extra water, and then I just pulled it away so that it was an irregular edge, because I didn't want a straight line on my pattern. Okay, so you can see there that it's an irregular edge. Now this bit here, I'll pull it out. And I let my serviette dry. And I did the same thing to the other serviette that I was going to put here. So I have two serviettes with the same pattern. And what I did was I laid the other one down and this one on top of it. And then I glued one down and then I glued the next one over the top. And what it meant was that you couldn't really see, I'll show you again, you can't really see where the pattern or the tear is. It is a slightly darker, but it's not that noticeable. If I was making it twice as wide, I would do the same along these edges here as well, so that the overlaps were hidden or married into each other. Now I'll just measure this and I'll tell you how big it is. But it's essentially the size of 2 serviettes. But let me measure it. Okay, it's 33 centimeters high, which is around about 13 inches. And in width, it is 58 centimeters long. And that was just the size that I estimated that I was going to need to be able to wrap it around and create a journal with some pockets on the inside. So that's what I was expecting that I would need. And you can see that that's going to be more than enough for making a decent sized journal. So that's the size that I managed to get. But like I said, the great thing about this is that you can make it whatever size you want it to be. You don't have to go trying to find a big enough piece of material or fabric. You don't have to try and go and find a big enough piece of scrapbook paper that you've got to join bits together. And it's going to be hard wearing, water resistant, strong, and I'm hoping it's going to sew reasonably well on my sewing machine, but that will be for the next video. We'll find that out, won't we? We'll a bit of discovery. So that's the reason I got started on this wallpaper journey, but I've found that there's lots of other things that I can do with it along the way. I'm going to be doing a few more videos coming up of some other things, but the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a journal out of this. So watch out for that. That will be coming up probably not the next video, but very soon. In the next few videos, I will be doing a journal out of this piece of homemade faux wallpaper. And I love it. It's fabulous. All right, that's all I've got for you today. The video is probably going to be long enough without me, doing lots of projects in this video. We'll head to some projects in some coming videos. So I really appreciate you watching today. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel, that would be wonderful. And leave a comment if you've made some faux wallpaper out of packaging and serviettes before. Pop it in the comments what you used it for and what things you made out of it. That'd be great. All right, thanks again, and I will see you all very soon with another project. Have a great week creating, everybody. Bye for now.